Hello and good morning, CSI135 Section 400 Fall 2013 students at the Anne Arundel Community College campus. Alright, what we're going to go over right now is the solution set to the midterm exam, which took place last night. So I'm going to go in here. I've sent out the midterm answer key so that you have a listing of all of the answers, but I'm going to walk through each of these and demonstrate each of the commands just to make sure there's a clear understanding of what was expected and how to accomplish each of these tasks. So there were 30 questions. Number 1, based only on the output below, provide the list of options that were used with the last utility. It says the output has been truncated, but everything that you need to answer the question is displayed below. As you can see, the answer is last-IW. So if I type last by itself, there's something very interesting that you'll notice, and that is that all of these lines are symmetrical. There don't seem to be a whole lot of indentation like you see down here. And one thing you'll notice that we talked about is that last, when run normally, chops off the second digit, if there is a second digit, in the login ID. So if you take a look at the man page for last, and we'll come down to the I option. So the I option is like -D, but it displays the IP number of the remote host, and it displays the numbers in and dots notation. So you can use the IP addresses shown here in decimal dot notation. The second option, W, display full user and domain names in the output. And so let's go ahead and do an example here. So if I were to type last, and let's say I do awk, and I'm going to grab just the first field. Whoops. I want to grab just that first field, which are the login IDs. So as you can see, without any options, all of the login IDs are truncated after 8 characters. So the CSI is 3, the 135 makes 6, 7, and 8. So it only displays the first 8 characters. The output below clearly shows that it's displaying more than just those first 8 characters, along with the IP address. So again, if I reran this command and I piped it to sort-U, and the -U option to sort is going to go ahead and sort it, but then remove any duplicate adjacent lines. So it's basically as if we're piping it to unique, except the sort-U option gives us the ability to do that without creating another pipe. Alright, so there we go, and as you can see, it only shows the first 8 characters, right? So now let's run this command again, but I'm going to change it. We're going to put in -W, and now let's see what we get. Aha! As you can see, you now get the full login ID, and this is critical because if you were trying to find out who had logged onto the system, how many times, and you didn't use the -W option, you would miss out on those login IDs. And so the command would be last space, whoops, -D -I-W, and again it'll give me the full login ID, and you can see the lines are no longer, these are no longer lined up, or I should say the columns are no longer lined up. Some of them jut out because we've got the login IDs being displayed below. So the correct answer is last space -IW. Okay, that was number 1. Number 2 is based only on the output below, provide the list of options that were used with the Uptime utility. And so one of the first things you should do is run the command, see what you get. You can clearly see that that is not what we have below, and so the output we're looking for below here gives us the version information. So if I type man on Uptime, you'll see that Uptime only has a single option, which is the -V, right? So if I were to run Uptime -V, that is where I receive that information. So the correct answer for number 2 is Uptime space -V. Alright, number 3. Based only on the output below, provide the list of options that were used with the LS utility. It says the output has been truncated, but everything you need to answer the question is displayed below. And again, this was very similar to the question that we had on the quiz. So we can see that on the far left-hand column we've got the inode number. So if I did an ls-I, we get our inode numbers. I've got the permissions showing, so that would be, let's add in the L. And now we're getting close. But you'll notice that here we have the owner column, and we certainly have the owner column here, but we're missing the group column. As you can see, the -L shows the group, but we're missing that group column here. So we also have hidden files showing here in our output, but we do not have any hidden files here. So we know that to see hidden files you need the -A. So now you can see we have hidden files. So through the process of elimination, we've gotten it down to the point where I can see everything except I don't want to see the group option. And so let's go ahead and type man space ls, and let's see how we would remove the group options. And ls has a whole array of options that you can use here. We're going to speed this up by dropping down a little faster than normal. And it says -O, like -L, but do not list group information. So you could put the -O in there as well. So if I did ls-O and then A and then I would receive that information. So you could also do ls- I would have taken ls- AOIT, which would have done the same thing. So that would have been your answer. Either of those two answers would be correct. or I apologize. So there's one more option that we had from the quiz, which is the -T. So the answer is ls-OAIT, right? And remember that the T sorts the files by the time that they were last modified. So you can see here it goes all the way back up to March 2013, right? Currently to October. So it's ls space -AOIT is your correct answer. Okay. So based only on the output below, provide the list of options that were used with the who utility to provide that list of options. The output is truncated. So as you can see here, if I type who, normally, if I take a look down here, I can see that I've got headers, right? So this header line has been added to the output of the who command. So let's take a look at the man page for who. And if I look at the man page, I can see right away capital H is heading, or -- heading, print line of column headings. And so clearly here we've got the column headings. So let's try that. So if I do a who capital H, and sure enough, the name, line, time, and comment are added in. So the correct answer for number 4 would have been who space minus capital H. All right, number 5, which other utilities would I also want to look at if I'm investigating the capabilities and options of the Linux utility traceroute? So if I'm investigating traceroute, I would be looking at the man page for traceroute. And as we've talked about, if you get down to the very end, it says see also ping, ping6, tracepath, and netstat. So here are 4 utilities that you should also take a look at in order to get a better understanding of some of the network utilities that are on the system. And so that is your answer: ping, ping6, tracepath, and netstat. And that's the answer to number 5. All right, on to number 6. There's a file in the temp directory named totallyhugefile.gz. Your task is to determine which compression utility, either bzip2 or gzip, will compress the file the best, and to also provide the size of the compressed file in bytes. Okay, so if I go into the temp directory and I do an ls-lai on totallyhugefile.gz, okay, so here it is, and as you can see, the file has been compressed already with gzip. So some of the work has already been done. So as you can see here, the size of the file is 356,239 bytes, right? That's the size. But we need to compare this. So I'm going to go ahead, and you'll remember, you can see that the owner of the file is TPB. And very similar to the quiz that we took a few weeks back, you can certainly copy this file. So I'm going to make a directory called gzip. I'm I'm going to cd into gzip, and then I'm going to go ahead and copy this file, totallyhugefile.gz, into this directory. So as you can see, I now have a copy of this file that is now owned by me, the student account that I have here, CSI135-400. So first things first, we already know the size of the file when it's gzipped, so we need to ungzip it, right? So gzip-d for decompress, totallyhugefile.gz. And now we can see the original file, as well as the original file size, which is right around 3 million bytes. Okay, so bzip2-v for the verbose output, and totally huge file. And bzip is going to run, and typically bzip takes a little bit longer than gzip, but that's because the compression utility does a slightly better job in most cases when it's compressing the files. All right, so as you can see, the bzip utility saved us 98.81%. So it was able to take it down from right around 3 million bytes down to 35,000 bytes, right? So when it's gzipped, it's 356,000. When we use bzip, we can take it all the way down to 35,088 or 35,088 bytes. So the answer to your question is the bzip2 utility is clearly the better utility in this instance, and it took the file size down to 35,088 bytes. And so this is your complete answer for number 6. All right, on to number 7. Based only on the output below, provide the list of files that will be matched if the following ls commands were to be run. And so here's the directory that's been created, right? Or these are the files in the directory. Here are the 5 commands that are going to be run, and what are they going to match? So the first command, ls period asterisk, is going to match the question mark, so this file here, right? Because it matches any one character, a period, followed by 0 or more, and that's what the asterisk represents, 0 or more of any character. It also matches the period A, period 1, period B, period 2. Because again, the first question mark and the second question mark have to match and will match only one character, but any character. So the first question mark matches the period, the second question mark matches the A, the third question mark, the period, the third period, is going to match the period, and then the asterisk says 0 or more of any characters. So these are the 2 files that the first command will match. The second command simply says match a lowercase a followed by 0 or more of any characters. And you'll see that the question mark character in this instance is irrelevant because the asterisk is going to match 0 or more of everything. So it never gets to that question mark. So it's going to match the first file it finds that begins with a lowercase a, followed by, oh, correction, I apologize. So the lowercase a and the asterisk is 0 or more of any character. So, and it can be 0, right? So if it was 0, it's going to match, it would simply match that. So the question mark is picked up here because it matches the AA, but it does not match the single A. So let me explain that again real quick. So the ls a asterisk question mark. So the lowercase a will match any file that begins with an A. So here are our choices for that file. The asterisk says 0 or more of any character, and the question mark simply says match one character, but it has to match one character. So what's going to happen is we're not going to get the A by itself because we have the question mark here that has to match something. The asterisk says 0 or more of any character, so it's going to match the AA, the 3 A's, the 4 A's, and then all the way to the AAAB. Okay, that was the answer for B. C, ls dash dash, and then we're going to try to match a minus sign followed by any 2 characters followed by 0 or more of any characters. So if you look at the answers here, it's going to match the dash 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 RF, because again, it matches any file that starts with a dash followed by any character but only one, and then followed by any character but only one, followed by anything. So it's going to match dash RF asterisk, which is this file here, as well as the dash 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 RF. All right, ls a question mark question mark. So it's going to match any file that begins with a lowercase a followed by any 2 characters, but they must match 2 characters. And so what's going to happen here is it's going to match A. That's all it matches, is A. And then the last one that we have here is ls, and it's question mark followed by any alphabetic letter, uppercase or lowercase, followed by any 3rd character. So this is simply going to match something that has 3 characters, where the middle character is any alphabetic character, and that turns out to be only A. All right, so those were your answers for number 7. Number 8, based only on the output below, provide the answers to the questions that follow about the mail utility. So the first question is, which message is the current message? And this is a gimme here, because this was the exact same question on the quiz, and we already know that the current question is identified by the greater than sign. So the current message number is message number 3. Which message numbers are new and unread? Well, there's only 2 of them. It's message number 4 and 7, because of the N, means new and unread. Which message numbers will remain in your inbox file if you quit with the Q command? So the message numbers that would remain in the inbox file, there's 3 messages that will remain in the inbox file. It's messages number 1, 4, and 7. Which message numbers will remain in your varspool mail, so the file where your mail is actually located, if you quit with the Q command? And that is going to be message, or there'll be 3 messages. There'll be 3 messages that are left in the varspool. The varspool would be 1, 4, and 7, and the 3 messages that you're going to be left with in your mail file or your inbox file would be the ones that have been read. So 2, 5, and 7. So I got a quick correction there. So for number C, the messages that will remain in your inbox file are going to be 2, 5, and 8. So those are the messages that have been read, that have not been deleted or saved. The messages that will remain in your varspool mail CSI135-400 file if you quit are the U, N, and N. So 1, 4, and 7. And what command can be issued from the ampersand prompt to recover mail message number 6? And that command would be U space 6. All right, on to number 9. Identify the following as either absolute or relative path names. And so the first 2 are relative, right, because they do not begin with the / or the tilde character, which is the representation for the absolute path name to the home directory. So the last 3 do begin with a / or a tilde, so those are absolute. So it's relative, relative, and then the last 3 are absolute. Number 10, are the following true or false? And they are all false. So Linux does not stand for Linus. Linus is not Unix. Bill Joy was the creator of the Bourne shell. It was Stephen R. Bourne, so it was not Bill Joy. Bill Joy created the C shell. The #bang is referred to as a comment when it appears on the first line of a shell script. This is not true. This is the magic number that is followed by the absolute path name to the shell that you want your shell script to be executed with when it appears on the first line. The only difference between symbolic links and hard links deals with their permissions. This is clearly false, and there's a question further down that actually asks you to list 3 of the differences. The cat command cannot be used to create a file, and that is also false. I can simply type in cat etsy password, and pipe it to new file. And there we go. So the cat command can be used to create a new file. Okay, number 11, name at least 3 modes of the VI or Vim editor. So if I go into VI, and we'll name the file test. If I hit I go into insert mode. So in some, you can either say input or insert. So insert mode, if I hit escape, I'm in command mode. Remember, if I enter the colon to set the numbers, that was last line mode. Whoops. So that was last line mode. So the modes that we were looking for were insert or input mode, command mode, and last line mode. All right, number 12, provide the absolute path name to the file on the class system named Catch Me If You Can. And this is the absolute path name to where that file was located. In order to answer this question, right, you could have tried the locate utility, but that's not going to work. You could have tried which for Catch Me If You Can, right? But which is going to look at your path statement. So what you really needed to use here is that find command that we talked about a couple of times last week. So, and again, this says find, starting from the root directory, the file with the name, Catch Me If You Can, and then we're going to print out the answers. Now, the next part is very critical. Remember, we talked about redirection, the 2 greater than / dev / null. And what that means is any error messages that I receive, and there would be a lot. In fact, let me run this command without redirecting the errors. And so all of those permission denied lines, these are errors, right? And typically, if I'm searching for something, I may not be interested in all the directories that I don't have permissions to get into. So the way to overcome this, because I just want to see my answer, would be to redirect. And remember, 2 greater than is the file descriptor for standard error, and that's what the 2 represents. The greater than is going to redirect that error to dev null. And if you remember, dev null is also commonly referred to as the bit bucket. And so what I'm doing here is I'm going to find, and I'm looking for a file, starting from the root directory, so at the very top of the file system hierarchy, with the name, and here's the file name, Catch Me If You Can, and I'm going to print that result to the screen, and I'm going to say any error messages are going to go to dev null, which means I'm not going to see those. So if I hit enter now, you can see /temp /can you if me catch dude. So that is your answer for number 12. And I would make sure that you'd make a special note of this command, because the final exam is not actually mailed to you. You are simply going to be sent the name of the file that contains the final exam. Okay, so that was the answer to number 12. Number 13, what are the names of the bash shell customization files in your home directory and the 2 files that we have modified? And that's the .bash_profile and the .bash rc. Number 14, based only on the output below, provide answers to the following questions. So the first question, who is the owner of the file with permissions of 206? So let's take a look here, and this is the only file with permissions of 206, and the owner, which is the 3rd column over in this instance, is root. So the answer to A is root. What group is assigned to the file with a size of 25 bytes? You'll remember that the bytes show up here. So the group that's assigned to this file is student. What are the file permissions, the numeric value of the file stuff? So if we take a look here, we can see that it's 0, 2, 1, so 021. What are the directory permissions, the numeric value of the directory red? So here's the directory red, and the permissions would be 5, 1, 3. So it's 513. And what is the date and time the file with permissions of 733 was last modified? And again, there's only one file here with permissions of 733, and it's this file here, and that was October 1st at 2350. So those were your answers for number 14. Number 15, what is your UID number? And this was a command that we had looked at. There's two ways to get this answer. You could simply type in ID, and there is my UID number. And we talked about this last week or the week before, where we were looking at the password file, trying to see, okay, what group am I in, what's my GID, and what's my UID. And so the command is simply ID. Okay. The other way to do it, the second way to do it, would be to cat the etc password file. And you'll remember, if we do that, we get a whole lot of output. And we know that the etc password file is 7 unique fields. The first field is a login ID. The second field is where your encrypted password would show up if and only if you're not using an etc shadow file. So we are using the etc shadow file on this system. So it's simply a lowercase x. And then the third field is actually your UID. So let's confirm that. So if I type ID, you can see my login ID, my student login ID is CSI135-400, and it says that my UID is 4032. So I could simply cat the password file, scroll back up, try to find my login ID. I know I'm getting close here, so here I am, CSI135-400, and yes, it's 4032. Now, that's definitely another way to do it. How we would prefer to do it, though, is to simply grep CSI135-400, and I could do it like that. But I could even take it one step further, and again, using this awk command. And the awk command is a very powerful command. It's a very powerful programming language. But in this instance, I simply want to see what is in that third field. So $3. And remember, the dash capital F says the field separator. And so then I indicate right here that this is the field separator, the colon. As you can see, the colons separate all of these fields. Okay. So that also matches up and gives me much more granular output to deal with. So my login ID is 4032. All of yours will start. We go back up to the B group here. Where's B1? And B1, it'll start at 4008 and go from there, all the way down to 4032. Okay, that was the answer to number 15. Number 16, we just answered. How many fields are in the etc password file? Per user and the field separator. So it's 7, and the separator is a colon. Number 17, what is the login ID of the user who connected to the system from IP address 0.0.0.0 on Sunday, September 29th. So again, this is where the last command, and you'll remember when we did the -D, this is where we get some IP addresses, right? You can see there's lots of entries here. And we also use the W. And the W becomes critical again, right? Because, I guess we'll do -DI. So the W becomes critical because, as you can see, what's happening over here is, again, the login ID is being truncated. So, and I think I may have misspoke, so we're going to do IW, I apologize. So it's last dash IW because we need to see that full login ID. So here we can see where we've got some zeros. So how do I trim this down? I could go after the date, but I'm going to be interested in 0.0.0.0. And as you can see, we still have a pretty large list of clients. I could sort of filter through here, but let's try to trim this down a little further. Let's make it a little easier for ourselves. So we know that the date is September 29th, so I could then grep for September, and let's do 29. Let's see what we get. No, and why is that? Because we have a space around September and 29. So what if I did this? September 29 with single quotes. All right, so there we go. So the user, and you can see the time was Sunday, September 29th, and this is the only user to log in that day. It's CSI235A8. All right, what is the plan for user CSI135B25? So in order to find that, you would use the finger utility. And as you can see, the plan says, I am most definitely going to fail the midterm. But that was for B25, and nobody failed the midterm. So everybody did relatively well. All right, so the plan was, I'm most definitely going to fail the midterm. what is the UID for the user RHS? So again, if we cap the etc password file, in the previous example, we can grep on RHS, and I can see here that the UID is 103, but another way for me to trim this answer down to get just what I want would be to use awk with the dash capital F, and then to use the print option and get the third field. Whoops. And we'll close it out. And there you can see that it's 103. Okay. What are the permissions in numeric form on the following faculty directories? Now, this one required you to try to figure out where the faculty directories are located, but you've been given the login IDs. So if I use the finger utility and let's try DJH, you can see that it shows you the directory, right? So you know that the faculty directories are in /u/faculty. So if I cd to /u/faculty and then type ls- and we'll do LAI, we'll get a long listing here with lots of output. So WP Bryson, you can see it's 711. If we look at MKR, you can see it's 700. If you look at DJH, which is right here at the very top, it is 755. TLC is 711. And RYH, which is here, is again 711. And so here are your answers for those permission sets. Okay. Number 21. What is defined as the default standard output? And that is 99.9% of the time, our default standard output is the terminal or the monitor at which we're looking. Number 22, what is defined as the default standard input? And again, 99.9% of the time, it's going to be your keyboard unless you're redirecting your input or your output. Okay. Number 23, how many days has the class system been up and operational? And the answer to that is, well, yesterday it was 343. So the answer is 343. As you can see, this is the following day here. In which version of Unix did the ping command first appear? So if I type in man space ping and kind of scroll down here, you've got the man page, the history, right? If I'm looking at the history section, the ping command appeared in 4.3 Berkeley software distribution. And so this is the correct answer. And again, remember that this answer overrides something that you may have found out on Google. So the correct answer is 4.3 BSD. So number 25, write a shell script, and it must be created in the temp directory with the file name of CSI135-400, and that's going to be your login ID number, _, midterm, where the XX is your login ID number. Script needs to meet the following requirements. So let's go to the temp directory. I'm going to type VI CSI 135B25 _ midterm. So again, the magic number followed by the absolute path name to the bash shell. If I wanted to add some comments in here, I would do that. Though the first thing I need to do is clear the screen. The next thing I need to do is print out a welcome message. And remember, it's a good idea to always enclose anything that follows echo, especially in your scripts, and if you're using any variables or special characters inside double quotes. So we're going to say, welcome to my script. Okay. And then the next requirement, it must run the bash shell, and that's the very first line here, so we've met that requirement. Print out the current system date and time. I'll go ahead and use date. And then print out a list of the current system users who are logged on, and that would be who. And then down here, I will type an end of file, 123. Right, and again, where the hash sign occurs after the first line, as long as it's not followed by the exclamation mark and the absolute path name, these are comments. And I could give you some examples here. I could do a single hash sign, and anything that follows it will be a comment. I could do multiple hash signs, and then anything that follows it could be a comment. I could just do the hash signs by themselves, and that too is a comment. All right, so let me go ahead and save this, and I'm going to go ahead and do my chmod u+x on my file, CSI135B25 _ midterm, and then I'm going to simply run it. So I'll do ./CSI135-B25_midterm. All right, it cleared the screen. Here's my welcome message, followed by the current system date and time, and then the users, right? And so that is a valid shell script. So I'm already in temp, and I'm going to do an ls-lai on midterm to see who actually created the file. And so here are the users that created the file or the shell script, right? And so what I would do is, as long as I have read permission, I can go ahead, let me close that. As long as I have read permission, I can go ahead and run that. B7 made the permission 777. And this is typically something you want to avoid, because I can actually go in and change this individual's midterm file, right? Okay, so when I grade these, I'm simply going to cd into temp, and I'm going to run your script to make sure that it does what it's supposed to do. So that would be your answer to number 25. Number 26, name 3 utilities that can take more than 1 argument on the command line. And there are a host of utilities, but 3 utilities that do this would be copy, move, and cat. Number 27, what do VI and Vim both stand for? So if you were to type in man VI, we get the Vim man page. And this was also in the lecture. So Vim is VI improved is what Vim stands for, and VI simply stands for the visual editor. So that would be your answers to number 27. Number 28, name 3 differences between hard links and soft or symbolic links. So there are a number of differences. The 3 that you could have chosen would have been that symbolic links can span file systems, hard links have the same inode number, and a symbolic link is useless if the file that it is linked to is deleted. And remember, we actually demoed that when we were talking about the hard links and soft links. All right. Number 29, what do you call file names that begin with a period? And those are hidden files. And last but not least, what does Unix stand for? Whoops, went by there. What does Unix stand for? So Unix, if you remember, right, Unix doesn't actually stand for anything. It was sort of a play on the original operating system that Kernighan, Ritchie, and his team were working with, which was Multics. They decided to change the name to UNICS, and then it kind of developed into UNIX. But if you were to put in there Uniplexed Information and Computing Service, I will also give you credit for that. But again, it really doesn't stand for anything. All right, and then we had the extra credit question. And the question asks you to answer the following question. You'll get 10 bonus points, and it's basically you're going to try to figure out the logic question as to which casket, the gold, silver, or lead, which casket contains the portrait of Portia. And so that if only one of these answers, if only one of the answers at most is true, you can use the process of elimination. So we'll start with the lead casket. So the portrait is not in the gold casket. So if this is true, right, and remember, we're going to go ahead and assume, let's say that only one can be true. So at most, one of these statements is true. So if we assume that this is true, that the portrait is not in the gold casket, and we come over and we take a look at the portrait is in this casket, and that's what the gold casket sign says, then if this is true, that the portrait is not in the gold casket, and this one is false, it would have to be false, the portrait is in this casket, then this would also have to be false. The portrait is not in the silver casket. So if at most one was true, the portrait is in the gold casket, and this says the portrait is not in the gold casket, so it would have to be in the silver casket. So the portrait is not in this casket because this statement is false. And so that is okay, because remember, only one statement can be true. All right, so the answer was the silver casket. All right, so that is your solution set for the midterm. I hope everybody did well. The test was very fair, and it reflected all of the lectures and specifically the labs and the quiz that we did. Please make sure you're ready for the next quiz, which may or may not be next week. All right. Have a great week, guys, and I will see you next Wednesday.